Hey everyone, welcome. We're going to give it a few more moments just to make sure that everyone's in, and then we'll get started. Sounds good. Well, now that we know you can hear us, I guess we'll get started. Everyone, I'm Chase Summers. I'm the sales lead for Dataedo. With me today is our CEO, founder, and cartoonist, Piotr. He's going to lead everything today. He's going to walk you guys through these tips. So the 15 tips and tricks. He did give us a little more. I threw in 10 bonus tips as well. So you guys are in for it today. You're going to learn a lot, and we're going to be able to show you some tips that we've learned working with the product, building the product, and also some feedback that we've learned from clients that, underused tips or things that they figured were very helpful. So we're excited to share this with you guys as well. So for the tips and tricks, they're broken into 4 different sections. So we're going to have the schema import and changes, then the documentation, and then documentation sharing to share with your teams, and then the final tips just to close up. But with further ado, I'll hand it off to Piotr.
Thanks, Chase. Hi, everyone. So without further ado, let's go into the tips. We have quite a handful of them. As Chase mentioned, there's 25 tips. So I won't be spending a lot of time. I'll be jumping through them quite quickly. If you'd like to learn more about anything, just let us know in the chat or in the questions. We could follow up with more information after the webinar, if there would be an interest. Okay, so let's get moving. First section is schema import and changes. Tip number 1, use ODBC connection. So you probably know, I assume you know, that we have a handful of native connectors. Here you can see the list. Recently we added MongoDB and Teradata and Vertica. Yeah, these were the recent ones. However, if you have a source that is not supported, you can always use ODBC connection. This is a generic one that works with any source which has an ODBC connector. So it's provided by the vendor or the third party. Most of the sources, most of their databases have an ODBC connection. We tested quite a lot of them, so it doesn't have all the metadata you might expect, but it has the basic information, so it might be useful to get some to document sources we do not have the native connector to. We are actually extending the list of native connectors. We are building the team that will develop them, so hopefully in the future we'll have almost any source you would like us to have. And just the answer about the question from the last webinar, Chase didn't mention, it's our second session today. We figured we'd like to cover more time zones because there's quite an interest in this. So there was a question about JDBC connector, which is stands for Java DBC connection, and we cannot support that because of the technology constraints. This is Microsoft.NET, and Java is not quite compatible. Maybe it would be possible to do in the future, but we are not planning to, and there's an ODBC connector for that. Okay. Tip number 2, automate schema update. Again, I hope you know that when you connect to the data source the first time, you can easily connect again using this button, providing the connection details, and read the schema changes. So I have no changes over here in this case. You can make sure your documentation is up to date, in sync with your source. That it's as easy as just clicking this button. If you'd like to automate that to make sure you, for instance, every day you have the most recent source and most recent updates, you click this button over here. This link over here, saved import command, right? It's a Dataedo CMD file, which looks which you can find on your disk with our icon, so like something like this. When you double click it, it will run Dataedo. It needs to be installed on the machine, right? If you click it, it will execute in the background. It will execute the update. So you can put it in the Windows scheduler and have daily updates. import schema manually. Okay, I told you about the ODBC connector, but for some reason it might be challenging because it requires installation, or you have a data dictionary in Excel spreadsheet, or you extracted it some other way. You can also always create a manual documentation. You do it by clicking Add, then Manual Database. So it's like a blank, empty database. Then you could go to Tables and click New Bulk. Tables bulk, which is a form that you can use to paste like a data dictionary that will be imported into Dataedo. So let's copy template. When I copy template and I open the notepad, which is called notatnik in my language, in Polish, and yeah, you have it's like a template. You can paste it to Excel. I'm using Notepad over here, and when you paste this information, you can paste it back to, you can complete it and paste it back into Dataedo. I have something prepared. So if I have this over here, you can extract this from any database using some kind of query. Depends on the source. So let's paste that and see what happens. So I paste, right, and I have like a list of columns and tables, and I will click Add. Hopefully it will not crash. Yes, we have a success. And we just imported the data dictionary into our repository, right? So it's like another way of importing the schema. Okay. Tip number 4, use Schema Change Tracking report. For the enterprise users, you can go into schema changes tab on almost any object, on table, module, and database. You choose a time window. You need to enable this first. That's quite important. In the future, it will be by default enabled when you install, but right now you need to enable it. I have done it. And when you complete those, you perform those updates and click Generate button, you'll see a summary of changes on specific dates, on specific updates. So when I look at this date over here, I can see that we have added one object, and we have updated in 4 tables. For instance, over here, we have added a location column, and here is a comment why we added this, right? So you can create this comment over here, and it saves the timestamp and login. So I think that's quite useful. Tip number 5, remove tables from the repository. Quite often you can have tables that are just not used anymore, or are temporary tables, or are backup tables, whatever. Let's say you don't want them in your documentation. Let's say that this database log, I'm not interested in this. I don't want it here. I can delete it. When I delete it, it's being deleted from the repository only, right? So I delete it, and what happens next is when I import, it won't be imported again because it is on the ignored list. If for some reason you would like to restore it, you click this button, and it will be read again, imported again. But till then, it will be ignored. So once you delete it, it's being ignored from the future updates. Now let's talk about the documentation process. The most tips are centered around this. Organize database with modules, which is tip number 6. When you go through the list, when you select tables and you go through the list of the tables, you will see a module field, and you will see some of the modules. Well, if you have some visible next to the table. This is an overview of the tables which are assigned to modules. I assume you have some idea of what modules are. If you don't, then modules are those entities that help you organize database into smaller pieces to make sense of it. And they help you understand what databases tables are used for. and find the tables that are related to the same topic, right? So easily, when I look at the banking section, I see just a few tables, and I immediately can find what I'm looking at. They are quite useful. So to use this feature, you go through the list and you see, okay, I mean, this is related to products. Let's say these 3 tables. You can use Shift and Control. So when you select, you can now right-click and choose assign to module, and you can assign to existing module, or you can create assign to new module, which will be created, and we can name it, right? So let's call it products. You can go back to the list. It will be visible over here. You can also do it with this drop down. You can also do it by drag and drop. You can do it also on the form over here, again with the drop down. So there's a number of ways you can organize this, and which is nice. The nice thing is that you can assign those tables across different databases, and you can assign to more than one. So you can see that this table is assigned to more than one module. Assign ownership of modules, tip number 7. These modules can be useful for a number of things, and one of them would be to assign the responsibility for the database and documentation. So here you can find an owner field, and this will help you. When I click on modules, you can see the field as well over here. So you can assign, for instance, that could be ownership of the documentation. You can indicate who's responsible for documenting this part of database. It could also mean you can have 2 fields, or you can call the other one the architect, which will be responsible for the design of this set of tables. So let's say you'd like to add a column. You see who is responsible, you should talk to, who's the only one that can actually make changes to the schema of those particular tables. Tip number 8, use progress tracking. Having modules, you can now, well, even if you don't, you can click this button over here. It's called progress tracking, and it will show you what's the progress of the documentation of specific objects and modules and documentation database as a whole. The progress is calculated based on the fields, the description fields of various in various places. So the main function, all descriptions, it looks at all the descriptions over here in columns, in relationships, and all the elements. The more basic one, table and columns, look only on this level and the table level. So you can see where you still need to do some work, and also you can choose one of the custom fields, so for instance owner, and you can see which for instance tables have blank, they still require to assign ownership. Tip number 9, use description hints or suggestions. By default, this feature is enabled. You can enable and disable this using this button over here, hide and show suggestions. When it's enabled, you will see some blue triangles next to some of the fields. This means that when you right-click it, you will see suggestions for the descriptions and the other fields as well of specific columns. Those descriptions come from other columns with the same name. It is particularly helpful if you want to document, you have a table column with this particular name that should have same or similar description across different tables. So, I can see that this table column with the name, let's pick another name. Organization ID has organization department in table customer payments. So when I click it, it's being copied to the field. I don't need to type it in manually. Tip number 10, bulk column editor. Let's find some other table in this case. It's this is particularly useful for standard columns like modified date, for instance, right? So when I right-click modified date column and I choose the find modified date columns, right? I will see the form that has all the modified date columns in the entire repository. Here I can see the description and all the other attributes and fields, and I can simply copy, or I can even copy this for many rows at a time. I can do the same for title column and owner and so on. So I can quickly review similar columns throughout the entire repository. When I click save, it will be saved. So it saves not only descriptions, but a lot of time. Tip number 11, use rich text description fields. You can, most of the objects have this rich text description field, so tables, modules, and other objects. So over here, I have pasted information about manufacturing from Wikipedia article. You can see that I was able to paste images, rich text with links, and also tables. So it's very useful if you'd like to collect information, gather it in one place in our repository from documents, pages, and so on. Tip number 12, use titles for aliases. Let me find some other table. Okay, so customers. Well, this has a good name, so let's find. I'm gonna switch to. Yeah, let's have a look at this table. So over here we have a customer table, and we have an account number column. And in our organization, it actually represents customer number. That's how we call it in our organization. We have multiple systems, CRM, CRP, and so on. And they have some standard naming of tables and columns. But we would like to call things the way we call it in the organization, rather than a vendor or an architect thought at the time he was creating the database. So we allow this title field where you can type in the alias, the business name used in your organization that will actually translate the physical model into a more logical one. So when I use this table in the future, I will see, like for instance on diagrams, you will see the physical name, which you need to know to write an SQL, and the title, which helps you actually understand what it stands for, what it actually represents. Tip number 13, identify the same entity with the glossary term. So let's look at this example again, and I would like to find all the customer number occurrences across all our databases and tables. So what I did, I created the customer number term in the business glossary. So I've created business glossary, and I've created some terms, and one of them is a customer number. Then I assigned, for instance, with a simple drag and drop, or there are a few ways to do it, I assigned it to all of the occurrences of this entity, of this data in the entire repository. So now I can go to linked data elements, and I can see all the tables and all the columns that hold this information from all the databases. So that's really useful to find the same thing, the same element in across entire repository or across many databases. Tip number 14, reorder columns in a table. Let me choose our repository. When you're creating tables, they are, okay, this one is corrected already. Columns are often in the order in which they were created, not exactly in the logical order. Some databases like Oracle doesn't even allow you to change the order of the columns, and databases like SQL Server do it by actually dropping table, recreating it in the fly, and it's not always advised to change it. However, in the documentation, we allow you to reorder those fields. So in our case, let's look at our table, and you can see columns that were in the order that way they were created. So we have these fields, we have 100 of them, and then we have some other fields, and then we have again the fields up to 100. So I could reorder them by entering design table. I see the design form. I can now grab these tables over here, use arrows to move it, for instance, to the very bottom, right? And to order it, let's move these again to the bottom. When I save, the order of those columns was changed. So it helps me organize it in more natural way, and put some meaningless columns, not important one, closer to the end, for instance, and focus on those key attributes. Tip number 15: define virtual columns. So in the documentation, we hold. So these columns are columns imported from the source. I have actually did that before. We have a physical field net amount, and we have a physical field tax. I would like to see the gross amount. Actually, then I noticed we already have this in here. But let's imagine, for the sake of the demonstration, that we'd like to this field is not persistent. We would like to know what's the. Well, actually, we could use it for USD, for instance, or or some other currency. So Dataedo allows you to create columns only in the repository. Again, in the designer, when I go to the designer, you can click here. It creates column, and with the icon that it's user defined, and let's call it, gross amount euro, right? So you can define what's the formula. So net. Let's get it quickly. Plus tax times your FX rate, right? When I save it, assuming we have these columns, right? It's just it's not calculated. It's just information for people who would like to report from that table. It's so much easier to see physical attributes and all those other attributes which they will have to recreate in SQL. So that's like in a very structural way, physical plus the ones that would need to be calculated. Okay. Tip number 16: document primary and unique keys of views. So views typically do not have constraints. It's possible, but it's not used most of the time. So tables have the information. Most of the time, I suppose they have information about primary and foreign keys. Not in the data warehouses, but in the transactional databases, they do. However, views very rarely can have constraints. It's quite an advanced feature. And you'd also like to know, actually, I created this one before on the demo, so let's remove it. By default, it's the view does not have. So let's have this employee view. I would like to use it, reuse it, right? Someone has done it for some purpose. I would only use it safely if I knew what's the constraint. So like what's the uniqueness of this set. So if I falsely assume that business entity ID is unique and it wasn't, I could get into trouble with my queries, with my reports. I could get duplication of data, and to to communicate this information for other people so they can reuse those views, we can define the uniqueness of the views just like we would do for tables. So you can right-click on the column, choose primary or unique. In this case, it's not important which one. And then you choose, confirm the columns and choose the key once again, the key type, and press OK. And it was added, and it looks like it's just the primary key defined in the database. However, it has a user icon, which means it's user defined in the repository only. So it's for information for anyone who would like to use the view. Tip number 17, create manual tables for many-to-many joins. This one is a little abstract. Let's have a look at the documentation we have in Dataedo. I think it's here. So we have, you can see we have a bunch of tables. The red ones and this one over here these are physical, and they have a field called mask name. It is like an entity which identifies something called mask. It's not really important in this case. However, it doesn't have a lookup table. And if we'd like to show how it joins with other tables, it could be tricky. And you would like to maybe indicate that this mask ID is something like an entity of its own. You can create a virtual table just like you did with virtual column. You do it by right-clicking on tables and choose table, and you design like you would design a table. So you define name, you define columns, and then you can use it in the diagrams like I did over here, and create joins. So I understand the logic, even if it's not a physical table. Tip number 18, create a status field. Dataedo allows you to create up to 100 custom fields. So you probably know about the description field. Over here, I told you about the title field, but you can create a number of custom fields of your choice. We have a bunch of them over here. And one of them could be a status. You can use the status. Let's see over here in this database. You can use the status. Is it visible? Yeah, over here to indicate this. What's the actual the status of this table? Is it table or column? You can do it on column level as well. Is it still used? In this case, we have labels active, cancelled, deleted, deprecated, planned, and so on. Those labels are custom as well. You can decide what they are. But it's really nice to know to communicate if this table is reliable. If it's it might be deprecated, it might be planned, not yet used, created in the database, but not yet used. So this is a very simple field that communicates a lot of information, quite useful for anyone who would be interested in particular tables. Tip number 19, create owner field. Similarly, over here we have an owner column. It's a custom field which I've created, and I'm using initials to indicate the ownership of particular tables. Again, it could be used for fields and modules, which I've shown before. So again, you can communicate who is responsible for this particular table or the documentation of the table. Tip 20, create source fields. Let's move to the data warehouse. I've proposed here two fields that will help you understand, help everyone using data warehouse understand where does the data come from. I've proposed a source system field and a source field. So in the source system, I provided information, the name of the source of this from which database or system does the data come from. And in source field, I use the notation that provides the name of the table, dot, and the name of the column. You could also add, separate the table name and the column name. You could also create, enter here the transformation. If you could add some more descriptive information, like, for instance, it's being calculated by the trigger or something else, or ETL or something like that. But having even such a simple notation allows you understand in the structural way rather than in the description to really quickly see where does the data come from. You can do it on all the levels, table or column. Okay, now that you have documented the databases, let's talk about sharing. You should share the documentation. So our key tip here is share the HTML documentation. It might be obvious for some of you.
Yeah, but it's important.
Yes, and we found not everyone is actually sharing. Not everyone is aware of this feature. So let's move on. So 4 more tips left. Tip number 22. Use different exports for different audiences. So let's jump back to the program. So quickly, if you don't know how to share the documentation, how to export it, then you do it by clicking export. Then you choose the format. Let's focus on HTML, and then this one is by default. And then you define which tables, databases, and which modules you would like to include in the document in the HTML. Then you define which objects, which database objects you would like to have, and then fields. So you could have multiple different exports, and I've shown you how to create like a shortcut for it using this command file to exclude certain information for certain audiences. So you could include only some databases and some modules, and tables also, and some fields for one audience and the other one for the other audience. So if you'd like to have just a basic data dictionary, you could exclude all of these, and so people outside your organization don't know who the owner is, for instance, right? And then it's easy to generate it using the command file. Tip number 23: automate the HTML generation. So to make it even quicker, you could I shown you the import, how to save the command for the import, and this is exactly the same concept. You save the command file again. When I save it to the disk, it's already exists. That doesn't matter. So I have it here, and this is like the executable that will generate the documentation for the selected parameters that I've provided. So scope of the documentation and the location of the file. So what I could do right now is I could schedule this in the Windows scheduler, schedule the update, and then generation of the documentation, so that every day people come to the work, they have most recent schema and documentation. Okay, so that was the sharing and documenting and all about the product. Let's now have 2 final tips. Tip number 24: always update our software. We are working really hard to fix bugs, make improvements, fix user experience, and add some functionalities. And we found out that some of our customers are running as old versions as version 5, which released like in 2016. It's actually true. Last week we found out that we have a customer using version 5. Last month we released version number 9. So this customer is missing out on a lot of things we've done for the past couple of years. Please make sure you update it. I hope it's easy in your organization. If it's not, let us know. Maybe we could work on that as well to make it easier. Okay, and final tip: if you need any help, always good. I would like to use always the opportunity to let you know you can always reach out for help. We really have a world-class support. We are appreciated by our customers on Gartner peer reviews. If you need anything, any support, let us know. You can use live chat on the website. You can email us. You can reach out to anyone on any contact you have in our company. So like Chase or Tom, you probably know one of them. And you can use the resources on our website. We're always happy to help and improve. So yeah, that was it for the tips.
While you guys do that, I guess we'll go ahead and dive into the questions. So I did have one question in the chat. I wanted to make sure that we didn't miss, even though it wasn't in the Q&A. Piotr, if server is changed or upgraded, do our modules remain?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the point. We don't with the upgrades, we don't want to take away anything from the data you've provided.
Yeah.
That's what you mean. If you mean modules like functionalities of Dataedo, if the subscription customers, they have access to any version, any functionality within their plan. So yeah.
I wanted to make sure we got to that because I felt like that was important. And then, so I'm going to start from the beginning questions that came first. When doing an automated schema update, is there a way to build a workflow to prompt data stewards to review and document changes?
With some custom development, potentially. There's nothing out of the box at the moment. You could build some kind of the report because all the data is sitting. So let me switch to program. So the information over here and information on the report over here, it's in the database. So there's nothing out of the box, but it's possible to build some process that queries the data and then sends out the message. I think we did this a while ago. I would have to look if we have something, but with custom development, yes.
If you have the same schema in two database environments, dev, test, etc., how can you easily keep field documentation, user relations in sync or propagated?
Yes, so that deserves a bit more work in the Dataedo and webinar on its own. However, you could try. So we did this functionality of copying at one point. It never came out of beta because there was not a huge amount of interest. But maybe we should focus back on that. So what I could advise you, at least try set up two repositories. So set up a Dataedo dev. And Dataedo prod, you can do it. So you can have unlimited number of repositories, use the server version, and use it on the same server. So you have server repository, you will have different databases. So what you can do then is you import the schema into all of them and connect dev to dev, prod to prod, and so on. And then what you can do is you click here and you click copy descriptions. You'll see beta because it never came out of beta. It's quite old fixed functionality. Yeah, please make sure you back up the repository with the SQL Server tools. Yeah, you can copy across the documentation. Yeah, so if you have just one database, you can copy across the documentations, right? And then you indicate which source documentation should go into, so like a database to a database, right? So you indicate, and then it will, I don't remember exactly how it works, but it copies the descriptions and the modules and the diagrams from source to the destination. So you could be documenting dev and then copy this to test and prod.
So to move on to the next, so can the schema change feature provide a diff of objects like stored procedures and functions? Sorry, I just read that slowly.
So
Yeah.
there's let's run this report on this repository here, and let's find some object. There is no okay, we changed the trigger over here. Okay, it was created. Yeah, that would be tricky right now to find which was changed. Yeah, so what we can do, we can show you the script. However, it's not like you would see with real change tracking. So it's in this format, right? So you can see how it was before and how it's right now. There's no, if there's just one line different, it wouldn't show. It will just show the entire script. So for the other attributes, yeah, let's see if we can find anything. We usually add oh yeah, this one was updated, so you can see that we changed the length from 1024 to max. That's sort of the answer to the question.
Got it. So the next is, can a table reside in multiple modules?
Yeah, it can. As I shown you, you can like in this case, right? This is in 2 modules. Yeah, you can drag and drop it. Yeah, so you can see, really easy.
Great. So when you have some standard columns in a large number of tables and apply the same description to all of them, dash when a subsequent change to that description occurs, what is a good way to mass update all the descriptions?
With a little, with a manual update. So let's take this example of the column modified date, right? We go into this form, right? And we make an update. So let's say, I don't know, we want to add X, right, on the odd end. And we select all of them. Yeah, we confirm, we paste and confirm, and that's the bulk update. That's the whole thing, all there is to it. I won't save it, but you get the concept.
Yeah. Is there a way to use comments in stored procedure definitions imported that would automatically pull in to the description or other columns in response to a report?
There isn't a simple way. We were looking into this actually, because that would require some parsing of SQL. I got this. So yeah, it depends. These comments could be tricky. It might be possible, but I'm not sure if that would be actually useful. But there are sometimes comments, in a structured way above the definition, and we would be able to import it, but it doesn't do this. This functionality is not here. So what you can do right now, you can go basically procedure by procedure and paste it like this. Yeah, you can paste it through Notepad, so it's not formatted, but basically something like this.
And then there was also the question of, can the column reorder be reflected in the physical database?
Oh, no. That we don't push any changes. So the answer is no, we don't push that information.
For boilerplate naming conventions, is there or could there be an option to automatically generate titled for columns, i.e. first name would result in first space name?
No, it wouldn't, and I wouldn't advise you to do it, because if you have a first, underscore name and you put first name in the title, there's no value added. It would, it would confuse you rather than provide value. So I would not. Well, you could do it with an update, SQL update on the database, so like an external, tool. I would not advise it, because it does bring no information, and it just creates noise, in my opinion.
Great. And then, can we do source and destination mapping?
Well, I just shown you how you can sort of map. it's not like mapping because you don't see it on the other end. It's not a so Dataedo is not a data mapping tool. You can use it for mapping, but it's an Excel-like mapping. It's not a it doesn't it doesn't have a like full lineage. So only the way I've shown you.
Right. Mark also said he would like to copy from documentation to documentation within the same Dataedo database. And then he said, when I change a documentation title, it changes the sort order. I would like to have the documentation published with a different title.
Yes, okay, yeah, I see. I think, again, I didn't use this feature for a while. If you create another AdventureWorks database, in this case, you can copy the descriptions within the so current repository. You can then point to it over here. Yeah, like this, and it will be copied. Yeah, I'm thinking if that would actually solve your case. I think it could. However, it's a beta function, and yeah, again, please make sure you back up the repository. Yeah, if you have access to the database, it's not difficult, just 2 clicks of the button. But yeah, that I suppose that could be the solution.
Great, and looks like Samantha provided some good background there as well. Is there any feature that if we share the exported document and then do some changes to that document, that we can import it into Dataedo?
No, that's not the way we intended our tool to work. We are building a web version for a while now. It should be available anytime now. So this would be your interface to update documentation back. So HTML will probably never have that because HTML is supposed to be this read-only document. If you'd like to write back, then web version would be the solution, the tool. In the first version will have just read-only, and the second version, a month or two later, will have option to edit the description. So yeah, with a little magic on your end, you could build something like that, but we're not planning to.
Great. And then Samantha asked, when do we need to enforce that all users are on the exact same version of Dataedo? Major versions only, always? What do you recommend?
Always. Well, there is no logic in the numbers. Just the major number is, or maybe there is. I'm not the one planning all the digits and so on. But I would advise everyone being always using the most recent version, because even the smallest digit has some fixes. Yeah, they should work. Two first digits should work on the same. Should be able to work on the same repository, and the program will tell you if you cannot connect, because the repository has a version as well. If we make a minor update, you can still connect with 2 versions. Yes, but option to update software is something beyond us. It's all often managed by IT. We don't have much influence on that. If you have the option, always use the most recent one.
Absolutely. And then is there a way to add valid value list for a column in a table?
A good question. We are building the functionality of lookup values. So for instance, if we look at, I don't know, a status field or country code, for instance, right? So we'd like to have valid, for instance, ISO codes for the country codes. We're building the module that will allow you to define the values, and also for fields like status, even if there are just 2. Right now, what you can do, you can build a custom field, sample values or lookup values, but it's just a name, so you can create your own field. There's no limitation on that. So it wouldn't be useful for large lists, but for this one, you can just list. You will say UK, and so on. It's just a text field, so you can say United Kingdom, right? So that's how we can do it right now, or just use the description field. And at some point, within a couple of months, hopefully this year, we will have a lookup for the table, and they will be shared. So you will be able to define all the country codes in the entire repository and have one list. It's on its way.
Awesome. And then we did get a question come in. So is there a way to include schema changes information in the exported documentation?
That's the same question we got on the last session, by the way. Currently, we don't have that. We are working on it. Yes, that would be available in the future in the extended version of the HTML. The extended version is licensed, so there's the free. Let's have a look again. We have this one is the basic, so it's called Plus. So the basic one is free to share, and this one is licensed, so you would need to declare the number of users. It's not protected, but just declared users, and it will have this. So it's like an enterprise class export. It's on its way.
Fantastic. Awesome.
Yeah, I think time is up. People are heading to next meetings.
Absolutely. Guys, Jason, thanks so much for your content. Adrian, good to see that you enjoyed it. Guys, awesome. Happy to have you all here. We'll wrap it up. Piotr, if you will, go ahead and throw our contact information back up there. Guys, if you need anything, reach out. We're one email away, one call away. So always happy to help. And, we just appreciate you guys being here.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. So I've seen you would really like to have another session. So see you on another session of Tips and Tricks with Chase and Piotr.
That's right. Thanks, everyone. We really appreciate you dropping in.
Thanks. Have a good day.